All right, take out your notes, please, and also leave out your lab. We're going to need it in a minute. So keep out both of those things. All right, so we have to finish a couple things in our notes, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your lab. But what we're going to talk about is something that we call the organization of life, and that complex living things are organized into these various levels, from simple to more complex. So we're just going to talk briefly about that. So when we talk about living things, the simplest level of organization is really the cell. A cell is the basic unit of life, as we said many times. And some living things, their organization stops there. They're just made of one single cell or a few cells. But in more complex living things, there are other levels of organization. Let's think about a human, for example. We have many cells in our body and many different types of cells. Different cells in our body, they have different structure. They look different. They have different parts. You know, the cells we've been drawing in our notes and the one you did was sort of like a generic animal cell. But most cells do not look like that. They each have their own unique characteristics that allow them to do certain tasks. So, for example, a muscle cell is a type of cell within our body. Now, here's what a muscle cell looks like. They're elongated. They have a nucleus in the middle. They don't look much like the cells we've been drawing because they have this specialized shape to do a certain job. Well, these cells then, in complex living things, often work together in groups. And they form the next level of organizations, which we call a tissue. A tissue is a group of cells working together to do some task. For example, a whole bunch of muscle cells working together form different types of muscle tissue. Now, you guys learned about these probably in health, right? Does anybody know the three types of muscle tissue? Emma?
Cardiac, smooth, and skeletal.
Skeletal or striated, yes. Those are all types of muscle tissue. Again, that's another level. It's a bunch of cells working together to do some task, to contract. And from here, all the levels are very similar. So a bunch of these various tissues working together, they form an organ, such as our heart. It's an organ. It's made of lots of muscle tissue, but as well as got nerve tissue and blood as well. And so a group of tissues can work together to form organs. So what do you think an organ system is? Organ? Yeah, a group of organs working together for some task, such as our heart and our blood and arteries and veins and capillaries, all those organs working together to form our cardiovascular system. And finally, that leaves a bunch of organ systems working together, such as the circulatory and nervous and endocrine and excretory system. All those body systems working together form an entire living organism. A human, for example. Or maybe not a human, I don't know. I had a debate in several classes about this question. Human or not human, I'm not sure about the true answer. Is a lizard a human?
Yes. yes and no.
I hear yeses and nos, but anyway, that's beyond today's conversation. All right, so this is what we call the organization of life. And for now, the most important thing for you to know is to know the correct order. That the simplest level of organization is cells. They work together to form tissues, which work together to form organs and organ systems, and eventually a full organism. All right. Now, when we've drawn cells and we did our cell drawings, we looked at diagrams earlier on in our notes, and everything was nice and neat, and you could see all the organelles are separate. They're each colored in a different color, make it easy to identify. But in real life, things don't look so neat. Organelles are often very difficult to find and difficult to see. Many of them are colorless. Okay? And some cells have certain organelles and not others. But for our purposes, what I wanted to do is show you some actual electron microscope images of some of the organelles. And you could probably, we could also review their function, which will be helpful for the Wednesday's quiz. You could probably guess what this one is, right? Or not guess, you probably know and can identify this one. Veronica? Yeah, how did you know?
It's like a
Jelly bean with all those folds inside? Yes, that's the mitochondria. What does the mitochondria do? Somebody raise your hand and remind me, Nicole.
supplies with energy.
Supplies the cell with energy. I really don't like the word makes energy, but releases energy. Even better. And so in our field of view here is about 5 micrometers, and this mitochondria takes up pretty much all of that space. You know, the organelles vary in size, and they vary from cell to cell as well. These are just some estimates. Now, this next one's not quite as easy to identify because these structures, there's many of them here, don't quite look like what I told you they often do look like. Know what they are, Nicholas? No. Ribosomes are always circular little dots. Joey?
Chromosomes?
Yeah, these are chromosomes. Now, I said they're often in the shape of X's, but sometimes they're not. Yeah, each of these is a single chromosome, which has information in it, the DNA. They're made of DNA and proteins, and they have all the information that, determines what a living thing is going to be like. An individual chromosome might be 5 micrometers in length. In fact, it could vary quite a bit. Now this is an easy one. This whole round thing is within a cell. So what are we looking at, Eli?
The nucleus?
Yeah, that whole thing is a nucleus, but don't label it yet. Because what is number 1 actually pointing to? It's a portion of the nucleus. Jonathan?
Nucleolus?
Yeah, that's the nucleolus. Does somebody remember its function? Nucleolus? Nicole?
We called it the little nucleus.
Yes.
So like the beginning of the nucleus.
Not quite. It makes another organelle. You know what one, Eli?
It makes ribosome.
Yeah, it makes ribosome.
If that was like on a quiz, how would we know that it's not like the basic nucleus?
You'd have to know. You'd have to see the surrounding cell to be able to tell. Next, outer layer. Emma?
The nuclear membrane.
That's the nuclear membrane, which allows certain things to go into and out of the nucleus. In this case, in this cell, the nucleus of this cell is about 3 micrometers or so. And there are times in a cell's cycle in which the nucleus disappears. The nuclear membrane breaks down, disappears, comes back later on. What type of cell are we looking at here on the top? Chloe? Yes, a plant cell. What is the arrow pointing to? Olivia? Well, it's in the central vacuole, but it's pointing to the edge here. What would that be, Grant? Yeah, that's the cell wall, which protects and supports the plant. And this cell is about 90 micrometers in width. How about down here? Now this one's tough because you may confuse it with one other organelle. But I will tell you, this is near the nucleus. Does that help? Nicholas? Yeah, that's the ER. ER, its job is to transport things within the cell. Emma?
Was the thing that you thought we were gonna mix it up with was Golgi bodies?
Yes, yes. In this case, it's about 35 micrometers from one side to the other. One I think lots of people know. Courtney?
Golgi bodies.
Yeah, these are Golgi bodies. That package up and ship proteins to leave the cell. And in this case, they're about 10 micrometers. Now I don't think I really need to go over this. We already have done it many times, making a wet mount. You guys should know how to do it, but the instruction I was going to give, and you can write it down if you wish. To make a wet mount, get your drop of water, stain on the side. You get a very thin sample. Okay. You place it in the stain and cover with a cover slip. All right, then the last thing today, if you have your lab out, you may want to use it. I just want to review with you. Make sure that you saw what you were supposed to be seeing on the lab. So if you need to check your drawings or redraw any of them, you may. So what cell are we looking at here? Nicholas? No? Morgan? That's the onion cell. Each of these dark outlined areas is a single cell. Okay? Again, in this drawing, you can very easily see the cell wall, the cytoplasm, the nucleus. Here it is under high power. Okay, very similar. What's that? Human cheek cell? Yes, here's the cheek cell. Here's another good cheek cell. Here we have some clustered together and overlapping. But again, I see the cell membrane, I see the nucleus, I see the cytoplasm. You may not see as many, yeah. But that's basically what they look like. And here? Okay, if you need to redraw it, you can redraw it based on what I'm showing you right here. This is elodea. Again, I see the cell wall. I can see many, many chloroplasts inside of each cell. Now, the one people sometimes have a tough time with is vacuole, because you're not really looking for something. What are you looking for? Yes, space. You're looking for empty space. So, again, you have these drawings if you need to fix what you saw, but hopefully everybody was seeing the right thing.